Good evening, everybody. Scott Stevens here with some weather as we hit our 5-day-a-week podcast, looking at weather around the States, Canada, and then a few other locations around the world. As we transition from summer in the northern hemisphere, and we could just cut the seasons in half. We've got the warm half and then the cold half. That half at which the sun is below the equator or above the equator would determine kind of where we are seasonally. So let's review the last 30 days, not the 180, but let's just go with 30 days. And we see that we've had both hot and cold weather, and that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this in the straight up description of the show, was just how we could have record heat and yet record cold at the same time. What is the delineating factor? What would be the cause of why we see this disparity, how we can have such a convoluted narrative around climate and climate change? Can both sides actually be right? Can we be entering a climate crisis without carbon dioxide having anything at all to do with it? Could it actually be, say, the sun, and that also can precipitate a climate crisis? It's something I think we need to back away from the dogma, from the talking points that surround DC and have infected the media and the narrative right now, and ask, could the sun be the driving factor? But in the meanwhile, we still have to deal with the day-to-day, the early colds, the record heats, the drought, the fires, the early snows, the blizzards that are out of season. All of these things we still have to negotiate in our day-to-day lives. Hey, Robin, and this is going to be the challenge that we're all going to be facing over the coming months and indeed probably years. And it is my anticipation that we will see this debate drawing to a close, coming to an understanding globally inside of 3 years. So yes, there's that crowd that says we have only 3 years to do this. Okay, I could agree with that. And we've had that deadline put in front of us time after time after time again, and we're left wondering, okay, I see weather, but I don't see a climate crisis. All right, what we're looking at here is the 30-day, 2-meter, 6-foot level temperature anomaly. And that is the standard height at which weather stations are installed around the world. This is the 2-foot height. And we can see Antarctica. And I only bring up Antarctica because there was this story to where record temperatures hit Antarctica as the region experiences all-time heat. Now, their all-time heat was a simple 18.3 Fahrenheit or about 65, 66 Fahrenheit, 18 Celsius. And that was way up here on this tip where we had a westerly flow, and that created a Chinook condition, and boom, doesn't matter where you are on this planet, Chinook is Chinook. The atmosphere warms up as it descends. It's compression. That's why diesel engines work. If you compress that air tight enough, it's going to get hot enough to auto-combust, provided there's a fuel and oxygen in the mixture. So the cold has been on the continent, and on average, the Antarctic continent over the last 30 days has been about 1/8 of a degree Celsius cooler than normal, with the coldest almost 10 degrees Celsius or 18 Fahrenheit cooler than normal. Ironically, it's that same location where they had their all-time highs. Again, so we're going from extreme cold to extreme heat, and then some other another like how do I say this, like a triangle shape where we have 3 other locations where we have had above normal temperatures. Let's go to the northern hemisphere. And we can see the heat has been focused out over the Arctic Ocean. What is coming over the coming 2 weeks is an incredible cold over that exact same region. We're oscillating the planet from very hot to very cold. And even the word hot is likely a misnomer. When we're up here, we're looking at average maximum is 9 degrees Celsius above normal, which is about 16 degrees. But when the normal is, say, 40, 45, that means you're into the middle to upper 50s, which is then almost comfortable. But water has this incredible way of losing a lot of heat via evaporation once the cold, dry air shows up. So it'll be very easy to pull that water out of the oceans when the seasons do change. But up north, we can see all of that warmth extending over the western states, and beneath that, widespread cool, even through Africa. We've got the desert locations, which are warm, but once you get to areas that have seen above normal precipitation, the greening is a little bit intense. I'm on the verge of a sneeze here. All right, there's that. Let's start with some stories. And the reason I bring that up is because Simon Lee bringing up the ensemble mean. The ensemble is a model, and then there's variations on that model. It's like the guys who forecast economics. What if the unemployment rate ends up at 8% or 7.4% or 6.8% or 6.3%? Then there's this. So they add these different variables inside the model and then run them all. And then we'll look at the outliers and then average the rest. And that's what we're kind of seeing here. But what this brings up is a big ridge sitting out over the Pacific. It starts from January to February. This ridge in the Canadian model, the CMCC, just gets bigger. This one as well, the ECMWF, also the ridge gets larger. The Météo France model, the ridge gets larger. That puts us in what is called a positive North American oscillation. What that ultimately means is a big ridge sitting out over let's come over here so we've got something to talk about. A big ridge, not too dissimilar to what we have right now, sitting off the west coast of the U.S., and then that opens the door for Arctic air to spill out of Canada, out of the northern latitudes, and then into the eastern U.S. So that is likely what we'll be seeing as we head on into the wintertime. The models are almost unanimous, not entirely, but the bulk majority of them are indicating that that'll be the case. That means that the northern Rockies, they've already begun to see snow, will continue to get incursions of this cold, wet weather early, often, and with below normal temperatures. All right, absolutely incredible supercell capture over South Dakota. This is just kind of an amazing time lapse. Look at that beast. Yeah. Is it entirely natural? And I honestly do not have an answer for that. I'm sure these existed in the 50s, 1850s, 1750s. I don't know. We don't have drawings that I'm aware of or photographs, and certainly no time-lapse imagery of it. But to me, there's just something fishy about seeing these kind of storms because I didn't see a lot of them as a kid. There's just some kind of rotation in the stack. The layeredness of this is just too beautiful to be, natural. There's something else going on here. All right, in a stunning reversal of its previous position on lockdowns, the World Health Organization, represented by Dr. David Nabarro, now admits the lockdowns are harmful as they have doubled global poverty and the rate of child malnutrition over the last 6 months. As we talked about in another perspective yesterday, what changed their mind? Was this always the case? Is this a new discovery? Or are they herding us into a different kind of behavior for the days, weeks, and months immediately ahead of us? Do they want us mingling and moving around? Do they want us mobile for something else that's coming? Estes Park, Colorado, looking mighty fine this weekend as the colors kind of in peak throughout the state of Colorado. We've had some strong winds last Sunday. We will have strong winds again this coming Sunday. So many of these trees will be bare by this coming Monday after this weekend's windstorm that's coming. All right, Greenland gaining 349 billion tons of ice over the last year. You can dive into that story over at Electroverse. There's some fascinating graphs. And even though we've just barely begun the cold season in the north, the accumulation of snow and ice is significant and continuing to grow, partly because I'm going to roll back here and we could go to Canada. Maybe that'll bring that in here, that they've had a lot of chilly weather already. And that has allowed for an appreciable accumulation of snows over the past couple of weeks. All right, just kind of a gloomy day at Boston. It looks like the crappy weather in Pennsylvania yesterday has shifted off to the north and east. That's just for you, Karen. And then Stockholm, Sweden, just, it's crazy. This is an amazing video as this gal takes her on a train, and there's no masks, there's minimal to no social distancing, and their death rate is less than 1 per day. So there's something going on there that they're doing that others around the world are not that, or they just have a completely different attitude about it. It's just kind of interesting. All right, something to explore. All right, back stateside and fires, number of new large fires or requiring emergency response. There are 5 of those. 5 were contained. And this was kind of the headline. Nationally, 74 large fires have burned 4.18 million. The majority of large fire activity is now in California and Idaho. Idaho likely to see some relief somewhat from this drought situation that's been in place. Let's come back over here. That'll load up because they're not quite as dry as many of the other western states, but in the central mountains they are. But with a dry 3 months, it doesn't take much. And when you've got lightning and you've got folks out in the end of the forest, accidents or intentional fires happen. It just happens. So what I'm curious about is the latest model continues to bring in additional precipitation. We're getting, yesterday, all of the Southwest was shut down, completely dried out. Some things have changed, and we might end up getting some additional moisture in the Northwest. So Idaho going to achieve some of that moisture. California, not so much. Not so much. They're still dealing with the record heat. That'll be in place come tomorrow, even as far north as, say, Pueblo, Colorado Springs, and certainly through the southwestern states. We do have some cool weather coming in with some cool nighttime lows. This is Billings, Montana, comes Sunday and Monday, as another round of snow will be on its way in through the northern Rockies for this weekend. Big winds ahead of it. All right, high temperatures yesterday, 104 Palm Springs Thermal and Eagle Mountain, California, with 15 degrees just northwest of Grand Lake, Colorado, the extreme. The Atlantic still kind of temperate. Formation chances over the next 48 and then 5 days, just moderate for this little easterly wave trudging on through. And it's just out of view through here, just down in the lower left or lower right corner of the screen. Dry weather through much of the southern state, but it is this hose of Pacific moisture now pouring through the Cascades. It's bringing us some pretty nice rains. We can see those rains there. Temperatures warm enough to keep it mostly rain, and that's just as well. We'll get our snow. That time will come. Whereas in the Northeast, there's those good, healthy showers, and those showers have resulted in some pretty decent precipitation totals. Bennington, Vermont at 8,700, maybe closer to an inch now, but the bigger totals, if I could scroll out here, maybe not. I got to back out here, and then I can shift, and then I can replot the data. We're crossing an inch. And after having one of the driest August and Septembers on record, where this drought situation really did develop across the Great Lakes states, or the New England states, this precipitation has been very, very beneficial, even though it is late in the year and is coming at a time when photosynthesis is shutting down. Nonetheless, we're getting the moisture into the soils prior to the hard frost. So we can at least have the roots and that vegetation that is still dealing with some respiration and circulation. We'll get some of that moisture in place. Back out west, the Cascades shrouded in clouds and showers. The heavier precip now heading towards the Tetons, the Yellowstone Plateau, and through the central of the Bitterroots and the central ranges in Idaho, and then into Wyoming. This is good. This is where the fires have been. And there's still one little plume right down there, right in northern Colorado. These fires just have not been, they just don't quit. They just are not quitting. One more graph, and there's the range now that we've hit sunset in New England. The rain, there's your circulation center, probably just offshore. Say Fire Island. We'll probably hit Block Island here within the next 2 hours. All right, let's come on over here. We did that. We've done that. All right, back to this guy. I see you guys over there. Beautiful colors, huh? Huh, Karen? Colorado. Although you guys, they have so many more trees in Pennsylvania and in the Mid-Atlantic states and Northeast. It's just the American forest is just gorgeous up in that direction. All right, so the question is, will this broad ridge, will we ever amplify it enough to where we can get some rain into California? As we roll the forecast through, bring it through one day, you can see it amplifying this direction. What that does, and this little ripple just coming across the Kenai Peninsula in Alaska comes up and over it and then digs strongly down to the south. Watch that baby happen right there, and then boom, down it goes, dropping into the northern Rockies. So that'll grab more air from north of the Arctic Circle. The sun isn't coming up there anymore. We've got snow on the ground. We've had blizzards for a couple of days, so it's very, very chilly up in that direction. and that's going to deliver a nice little surge of very cold air through the northern Rockies Saturday, Sunday, and then will spread quickly across the Great Lakes states Monday and Tuesday with some strong winds. There are a few reinforcing surges of very chilly air, and then something else that has had the model's attention for a while is the development of a hurricane. It shows up in the southern Caribbean. It kind of just forms about a week, 10 days from now, and it's either wandered into the Gulf, back across Florida, come up across Haiti, and then towards the north and east. Every day the solution is a little bit different. This one is a little quicker, so it doesn't actually impact Florida. We've had a couple of days where it has moved across the Florida Peninsula. This latest model does not do that. It brings it across eastern Cuba, which is probably just fine. So, as far as rains into California, it's beyond the scope of the next 10 days. Maybe inside of 2 weeks, we'll begin to bring some precip in here. Let's see if that happens. Here's the cold. Well, here's this weekend snow as it comes down through the northern Rockies. It's just cold. The farmers were really watching a change of seasons happen very, very quickly for the Great Lakes states, and certainly so for Canada. But look at this big bomb of a hurricane. That's a beast. This is a minimum of Category 3, but probably a 4. At some point as we move into that last week of October, this guy it's going to show up somewhere. Don't know the path, but this is something we need to be on the lookout for as we get closer to the weekend. Let's see, gorgeous autumn pictures from Jana. Grand solar minimum climate weirding affects all of the northern forest will burn off prior to the grand solar minimum or the ice ages. The sun's coronal hole rays, cosmic rays, gamma rays, X-rays, UVC have already killed them, along with other pollutions and so forth. So it's just a matter of time before they burn. And in some ways they have to burn, because then they return those nutrients back to the ground. The carbon goes back into the atmosphere to be used for whatever nature deems it so at the time that that CO2 arrives in the atmosphere. Then it could be used again. Otherwise, it's stored up in dead wood and unusable. It's got to be recycled, and that's the whole reason why we have that element of fire. Fire, fire, fire. The global warming nonsense, of course, is a scam to give them an excuse not to prepare for the coming freeze. And that's the issue, is the threat. It remains behind us. We're well into the climate weirding of the GSM with exaggerated mixing of hot and cold, even with. And here we are. It tends to be a big thing. And this is one other story that I did not get to on here. Come on down. This one. We've got clear skies again, and after a few days of clouds in northern Norway, we've got to return to the northern lights. And this happens time and time again, even without a solar storm, to trigger the aurora, because the whole magnetic field is shutting down, and that opens the planet to these influences from the sun and from the greater cosmos. And this humanity, or let's just say our sciences, have not yet experienced, so we may not and probably will not fully recognize the impacts of these changes until it becomes in view in hindsight. I'm ready for the snow in south central PA. When am I going to get it, Scott? You really, Karen? Let's go. Look, let's go back out here. Let's come over to this guy. And I don't know. I think you're probably too warm. For this part of the area, it doesn't look like a whole lot of precip. We could go where you're definitely cold enough there before Halloween. You're definitely cold enough. So if we were to throw any snow showers, but that's a 336-hour forecast. That is a long way out. That's noon, October 27. So we'll see if that happens. Robin, it's worth it. They're worth it. I've seen them maybe 24 times up in Idaho, and it's worth it. This is one of the reasons why on Vicky's show we were talking about places to go, and that's one of the reasons why I threw Iceland on the bucket list, just because it's so incredible. It's an incredible island, and I wouldn't mind heading up there to see some of the incredible natural beauty that resides at our northern latitudes. All right, guys, have a great night. I'll catch you tomorrow for another look at the weather, and maybe we'll be able to update your snow forecast. Karen and Jana, enjoy your insights. I hope to see a little more of you around, And tomorrow's another perspective as we anticipate the great reveal, likely resulting into some kind of reset. And it's always, always, always about what is on the other side of the turbulence, the boundary layers we talk about in meteorology. And without an ideal to hold, the elites are going to want to hold one. So we have to be able to equal, match, or exceed their vision. All right, catch you tomorrow. In the meantime, have a great night and keep looking up.